Now, SABC board chairperson Bongomusa Makatini says the attempted assassination of an executive at the public broadcaster shows that there was a fight-back campaign against their efforts to clean up the public broadcaster. Now, that is, of course, the lead story in the City Press, which I will be taking up with my guests after we speak with Mr. Makatini. Mr. Makatini, thank you so much. I know you stepped out of church for this interview. The first thing I want to talk to you about is, how do you establish as a fact that this was in fact an assassination attempt?
Thank you for the opportunity. The key thing is I had an hour discussion with Mr. Zigode, who basically took me through exactly what happened. That's one. But secondly, we know for a fact that as the SABC, we are busy with a cleanup campaign, which is informed by a number of reports that informs the actions that are being taken against those who may have contravened our policies. This talks to the public protector remedial action, it talks to the SIU investigation, it talks to the Auditor General and our own internal forensic, which has produced about 180 forensic reports. So when you look at the drive and the campaign in cleaning up and rehabilitating the SABC, of course there would be pushback and there would be fight back coming from those who feel vulnerable.
Now, in terms of this fight back, how are you going to protect those who are doing the cleanup? Certainly, we've seen now that people need protection. Are you going to have the police provide them with 24-hour security? And more importantly, many people have argued that some of the enforcers of what happened before at the SABC remains entrenched at the broadcaster. Are you going to hurry up with the processes? For example, the people that have been employed illegally that cost the SABC something like close to 40 million rand. Are you going to move on them? So firstly, security for those who are doing the cleanup and moving against those who are still actually in the SABC mounting the fight back.
Certainly, we will be taking steps necessary to ensure that our employees are safe. I'm not in a position to divulge the details of how and what will be done exactly, because that will compromise the very same security that we need to put in place. But in terms of dealing with all the irregular appointments, like I started by saying, there is a drive from the board to support the executives in implementing, for example, the public protector remedial action. We have already taken a number of steps to discipline quite a number of people. And of course, there are steps being taken around the issue of irregular appointment and bonuses that were given. So we are in full drive to implement all the remedial action because they are binding on the side of the SABC. You may have seen some of the reports that we've given that there's quite a lot that we have already achieved. And I commend the executive team that we have in place that is really driving the cleanup campaign.
All right, thank you so very much. That was board chairperson Bongomusa Makatini speaking to us, of course, on that assassination attempt that is the head of the City Press headline today. Now we look at the weekend newspapers with veteran journalist and broadcaster John Perlman. John, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here.
For having me.
And then, of course, we've got Theto Mahlakoana. She is, of course, a senior political reporter at EWN. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio. You both heard the interview of the board chair, Mr. Makatini. John, I'd like you to hold up this so that listeners can actually, and viewers can actually see. We've had an assassination attempt at someone who's trying to clean up the SABC. All three of us worked at the SABC at some point. What do you make of the story, and does it tell us a larger story of what is happening in the country at the moment?
Well, I think this is the bill you pay as a country when you don't solve things through institutions that are meant to solve things like the stealing of money and the misuse of public resources. And you pay an even bigger bill when you set about consciously to undermine the functioning of those institutions, so that when people do go out, and I don't know the ins and outs of the story because there are contesting reports, but let's talk in the general. You pay a huge bill when those people then are out on some kind of limb where they are exposed to physical danger. So, yeah, as South Africa, we are paying for the way things have been done over many, many years now.
Yeah. Theto, are you surprised that there is a fight back at the SABC, considering that there's a fight back in almost every institution that has been hollowed out by the state capture project?
It's a part of the greater problem, Karima, that we've been discussing over the months, of course, in the new dispensation of trying to clean up the remnants of the corruption and the looting that took in place under the Zuma administration. Now, the SABC is just one of those SOEs which, were looted in a grand way. And, of course, those who know that they've wronged the public and they've stolen money would not want these forensic investigations that are currently underway to take place, because those will, of course, reveal just the extent of the rot and the exact amount of money that was stolen, meaning that there would have to be some form of accountability. And, of course, people don't want to go to prison at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Now, one of the interesting things, of course, that also dominated our news headlines was the role of the Reserve Bank and the fact that the ANC was talking through three sides of its mouth on different issues. I've just had a long discussion from Neil Coleman to Tabi Leoka to the trade unions to the South African Communist Party on this question. I want to start with you, John. How does a country have a discussion on economic growth, which we must have because we've got 10 million people unemployed, outside of this loaded factional environment in which the South African governing party finds itself? And how do we say, let's put fresh ideas on the table, because we've had 25 years of doing the same thing and it hasn't yielded results?
Well, I think your framing of the question is very, very precise. And in conversations I've had on my radio show, listening, of course, to other radio stations as well, that is what people are desperately trying to get to the front. And the ANC needs to take a really long, hard look at itself in the mirror. Of course, mirrors can be very distorting, unflattering in this particular instance, and say the way they are going on, if this was a single issue election, the state of the economy and the election is now, they would have to say we are unelectable at this point, because there is no coherent conversation. To your question then more precisely, those who wish to lump any suggestion around what the Reserve Bank should do into a factional camp had better realize that the country is not interested in that stuff in the slightest. We're interested in hearing fresh ideas, and that this conversation about what the Reserve Bank does or doesn't do, to say they could do more, is not to align yourself with Ace Magashule or anybody who many of us have never met. We are interested in smart people doing exactly as you say. It hasn't worked, what would?
Okay, so Ace Magashule is fingered as the person that's trying to undermine President Ramaphosa's, new dawn. But the critics of Ramaphosa also argue that his new dawn is not open to new ideas of doing things, that we are going about things in the same old way. Theto, let's take the factional battles out. Let's just look at the political economy of the country. What is required?
Karima, there was a very refreshing, entrance of ideas and discussions that came about last year. We had the Jobs Summit, where industry sat with the community, sat with labor and sat with government, and basically came out and said to the country, we'll create 275,000 jobs in the next 5 years. And if you cannot, every year in the next 5 years, and if we cannot coordinate that level of discussion that takes place on a governmental level to that which the ANC seeks to do, then we're missing the point. There was a lot of momentum. There was the investment summit. There were a lot of task teams set up to interrogate what needs to be done for us to get to some point where we say that we actually realize that these are the tools we need to employ in order to achieve inclusive economic growth. But somehow we've lost it.
We're running out of time, and I've got newspapers to get through. The Sunday Independent says, exclusive, Ramaphosa misled the Parliament, and they're referring to what is called a preliminary report, a draft report by the public protector. Let me start with you, John. What do you make of the story, and do you think that President Ramaphosa owes Parliament an explanation and is in violation of the Executive Ethics Code?
Well, I don't know the answer to the second question. I mean, the headline says Ramaphosa misled Parliament in inverted commas. The first paragraph reads, Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane has found President Ramaphosa guilty of, quote, inadvertently misleading Parliament. So they are slightly different things. Look, this is, again, another institution that's been drawn into a whole lot of conversations that make it very difficult for us to have precise conversations about her findings. If that's what she's found, she must say so. If President Ramaphosa is unhappy about it, he and his legal representatives must contest it. I have no other knowledge other than the bits that we hear to cast a view.
The public protector made an interesting speech in Nelspruit over the weekend, saying that only God can remove her from her post. Now, there's been a lot of criticism, and she's been found by various courts to have overstepped her mark and basically not understand the law. Is she a genuine Chapter 9 independent break on power, or is she a proxy?
See, Karima, the beauty of our country and the Constitution is that whatever decision that she makes can, of course, be tested in court, isn't it? And can be reversed and overturned, as has been the case. And the independence of the individual, I think, should not besmirch the office itself and the importance of the role that it must fulfill in society. Now, if she indeed is somehow implicated in the proxy wars within the ANC, then that would be clear in the manner in which she'll be dealt with by other constitutional institutions in the country.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for rushing through some of the really big stories this morning. John Perlman, it's a pleasure to have you in the studio. Theto, as always, thank you for your insights. Well, that's your fix for the week. Take care. We see you again next Sunday.